Welcome to the third and final part of the third annual SR4U Boot Awards, brought to you by... Wait, what? We don't have a sponsor for the last part? How? What's going on, guys? Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you the final part of the 2018 SR4U Boot Award, with this video containing the one award you've all been waiting for, the Boot of the Year. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, there will be links to both down below in the description, and they are important to watch, especially part 1, because I explain all the criteria for all of these awards, and if you haven't seen that, it's definitely worth checking out, because why would you watch part 3 without watching part 1 and part 2 as well? But if you've already seen those parts, then all of this information is completely useless to you, at which point, just continue watching. Of course, feel free to share your own picks for all of these awards down below in the comments, and if you guys do end up enjoying this video, please support it with a like as well. That helps me out tremendously. And with all of that out of the way, let's get into the awards. Let's give out some awards. Now, this is an award that is on par with the best leather and the best speed boot, because laceless boots, as of right now, are pretty trendy in the football boot industry, and a lot of people are really into the concept of laceless football boots. And I don't think I gave out this award over the last 2 years because I didn't feel like I rightfully could, mainly because up until this point, I've yet to really come across a pair of laceless boots that I legitimately liked enough to say that this is, in fact, the best laceless boot that I can, in fact, recommend. But that recently has changed, which is why I think the best laceless football boot, not just of 2018, but ever, happens to be the ADIDAS COPA 18.1. This is a boot that has actually won quite a few awards this year, with the best laceless boot title as well, mainly because it's the first laceless boot that I can actually tolerate wearing, and a lot of that has to do with this super soft kangaroo leather upper. The combination of that with the prime knit, with the two elements coming together by way of fusion skin, it just works so well. It's not really like any other laceless boot that I've ever tried. It's not really like any other pair of football boots that I've ever tried, in that it's the first leather boot that really does kind of stand on its own in regards to the experience that it has on offer. Again, I'll give this warning: laceless football boots are not for everybody. If you want something that's super locked in and responsive, this or any other laceless model is probably not what you're looking for. Because of that laceless system, there is no adjustability, which means that depending on the specific shape of your feet, they'll fit everyone a little bit different. So kind of be warned when going for laceless boots, especially if you're having to order online. But if you absolutely must try a pair of laceless football boots, my recommendation would be only one, the COPA 19 Plus. Woo! The title of this award really says it all, and I've said this on the channel many times before: newer does not mean better. There were plenty of boots that were available throughout 2018 that originally came out in 2017, 2016, even in 2015, but that does not mean that they are worse or not as good as the ones that released more recently, which is why the two winners for this still very good, even though they're not that new, award are the Nike HYPERVENOM Phantom 3 and the Made in Japan Mizuno MORELIA Neo 2. These are two boots that are not the latest and greatest thing anymore, but are still absolutely fantastic. Now I'm going to be honest with you guys, this award is the equivalent of a participation ribbon, not really something that I would be too excited about, but because this is a boot that was actually pretty decent, kind of surprised me, but really wasn't a best of in any particular category and wouldn't otherwise win an award, but I still felt deserved some kind of highlight in the 2018 SR4U Boot Awards, I'm giving this award, that I'm not even sure what it is anymore, to the New Balance FURON 4.0 Pro. This is not a boot that has set the world on fire. It is not a top 3, possibly not even a top 5 speed boot off the top of my head, but in comparison to every FURON model that came before it, is such an improvement, it's not even funny. This is the first FURON model that is actually wearable, and I know some people have given them a try and were kind of underwhelmed with it based on some of the feedback that I saw. Again, I didn't think that this was a particularly amazing boot either, but in comparison to what New Balance has been doing, it is a drastic improvement, and I'm hoping from here moving forward, if we get a FURON 5, they're actually going to come out with something that is a legitimate, viable option as an alternative to Nike, ADIDAS, or PUMA when it comes to the lightweight speed boot category. These are getting there, not there quite yet, but like I said, still worthy of getting some kind of attention. This is yet another self-explanatory award, a boot that I am personally not a big fan of, and that award goes to the ADIDAS Predator 19.3 Laceless, the takedown model laceless boot that retails for $100, which I honestly think is way too much money for this. If you pay $100 for these, you made the wrong call, let me just say that. It's not that these are unwearable, but they're also not very good. The fact that these are laceless at this lower price point worries me because I know that this is a boot that's going to be very popular, and it's going to be a headache for me in the long run because a lot of people are going to think that just because it's laceless that it's good, and that couldn't be further from the truth. This is a boot that just doesn't fit that well. The lockdown is not very good at all in comparison to the laceless Predator 19 Plus, which admittedly is a lot more expensive, $275 for those versus $100 for these. When you're talking about laceless fit, feel, and overall performance, the Predator 19 Plus, as flawed as I think that boot is, blows these out of the water. This, in comparison to pretty much any takedown model between the prices of $80 to $100, is at the bottom tier in regards to fit, feel, and overall performance. It's just not that good. It's not a boot that I'm a big fan of, and if I'm being honest, it's probably the one boot that has come out this year that has been pretty hyped up that I truly would not recommend at all. This is an award that goes to a pair of boots that is actually really good, but it could have been so much better had they done a couple of small changes. So this award has to go to the ADIDAS COPA 19.1. This is a boot that I really expected to like a lot, more than I liked the COPA 19 Plus, but that didn't end up being the case, and that has pretty much mostly everything to do with the burrito style tongue that I know a lot of people are not big fans of. Basically what you have here is a lateral side of the upper flowing one piece across the top of your foot and then tucking into the medial side. That is what a burrito style tongue is. The only issue with this, especially considering the material they've used, is that it ends up being really, really stiff through the midfoot, which is the one thing that I don't really care for quite as much with the COPA 19.1 in comparison to the COPA 19 Plus or even the Nike Tiempo Legend 7 Elite, which I would say is more so the main competitor of this particular boot. It doesn't hurt the performance in any way, but when you're talking about a boot that has a kangaroo leather upper, you expect it to be really comfortable and very natural feeling on your feet. And the leather you get at the front, the kangaroo leather, super soft, super thin, feels tremendously good, but then when you get to the midfoot, not only is it a harsh transition in regards to the feel on the ball, it's very harsh in regards to how tightly it squeezes your foot. And again, everyone's gonna have a little bit of a different experience in regards to how they fit you specifically, but for me, if they just went with a traditional tongue design, a central lacing system, a little bit more traditional rather than this burrito style tongue, the boot would have been much better off. Now this award is for a pair of boots that's really, really good, but doesn't really get any attention either because of the brand or typically because of the way that they look, even a combination of the two. So I wanted to highlight this boot because I really feel like it is a legitimate top 10 option that people don't consider simply because of the brand and the way that it looks and partially the price tag as well. The made in Japan Mizuno Rebula 2V1. This is legitimately one of the best kangaroo leather upper football boots currently on the market. The quality of the kangaroo leather, as you'd expect from a made in Japan product, is tremendous. It's got this control frame memory foam insert that acts as a stability cage, as well as kind of a touch element in that when you touch the ball, the leather itself is quite thin, but it has this interesting dampened effect as well because of the memory foam insert. It's kind of a variation of the design on the original Rebula that a lot of people I think were a little bit more hyped up about. This is more or less the exact same thing with some modifications to the tongue that I would also argue is a little bit better. It doesn't slide around, it's kind of this internal elasticated booty system. Very, very comfortable. Not my favorite sole plate and stud pattern, but the quality is there, the durability is there, and again, it's everything you could hope for from a made in Japan kangaroo leather football boot. So, not very popular, but definitely really, really good. Now, unlike the award that I gave the COPA 19.1, where I thought the boot is really good, but a slight tweak would have made it that much better, this is a boot that's just okay, that really does need some significant improvement, not just for the sake of the product itself, but for the sake of the brand and drawing attention to this line because it definitely deserves it. And I hate to pick on Adidas, I hate to pick on the new Predator, but the Predator 19, whether it's the 19 Plus or the 19.1, just the Predator 19 generation in general, needs some improvement. I talked about this as being very disappointing in a previous video, in that this is basically just a rebranded Predator 18 Plus. They added the rubber on the heel and they added some black lines to change up the look ever so slightly. But other than that, it is pretty much the exact same product. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If they just launched this as a brand new colorway pack and added this rubber thing on the heel, people would have just assumed that it was the same boot with a rubber thing on the heel for the specific color and not an actual new model. But they launched it as a new model instead, which I'm kind of unhappy about, I was disappointed about. And again, it's not to say that these are bad, but for the second generation of the return of the Predator, I expected something more. I want something that is more aggressive. I want something that is more true Predator, what the line originally represented. And if we're being real here and looking at the history of this particular line and these laceless boots in general, the A16 Plus Pure Control, it was cool because it was the first time they had ever done it. The A17 Plus was an evolution of that, but effectively the same thing. Then we got the Predator 18 Plus, which again was just a variation of that original design. And now we have the 19 Plus that is just a recycled, rebranded, exactly the same as the Predator 18 Plus with the new name boot. So again, they're losing, I think, the hype around the return of the Predator, which they need to maintain if they want this relaunch to be successful. For the next generation Predator, the Predator 20 Plus, if that's what they're gonna call it, I'm hoping for some significant improvement and some significant design change. Because again, this isn't bad. I'm not just expecting change for the sake of change, but I want something that is, I guess, more a true representation of what I expect, and I think what most people expect the Predator line to be. Something that really drives the modern football boot industry these days is new technologies, new ideas, new concepts, new materials that we've never seen before on football boots. And in 2018, there was a good amount of that. One of the more controversial ones that pops up in my head is the split sole that we saw introduced on the Superfly and the Vapor, which I think is controversial more so because a lot of people just didn't understand it rather than it actually being something that unique, because it's not actually that unique. But for me, there is one technology in particular that really stood out above the rest as being the most innovative and the most interesting and ultimately the most effective as well, and that is the QUADFIT system inside of the Phantom Vision Elite from Nike. Now this QUADFIT system is so interesting mainly because you can't really see it, but it just works extremely well. You can see inside here, there's that silver material on the inside. It almost feels kind of like a Kevlar sock, and it lines the entire underside of the Flyknit upper that you actually get to see on the outside of the Phantom Vision Elite. That's attached directly to a ghost lacing system that is underneath the lace cover as well. So when you tie the laces tight, it pulls on that lacing system that's attached directly to the QUADFIT material that does a remarkably good job of holding your foot in place without adding any stiffness. There's no plastic, there's no hard spots within this entire upper, but somehow your foot is super secure, locked in, and you get this very responsive sensation from something like a Phantom Vision Elite without any of the traditional plastic reinforcements that we'd get with a Flyknit upper. If you compare the upper of this boot to something like the Nike Mercurial Vapor 12 Elite or the Superfly, those end up feeling a lot stiffer because there's a lot more plastic and internal lining materials to reinforce that particular upper. Yes, it does feel sock-like, but when compared to something like this, it's nowhere near as soft. And that's what I like about the QUADFIT system. The point of knitted uppers was to create that sock-like sensation, and this is the most sock-like feel you can get from any knitted upper ever, because of the QUADFIT system. Now this is obviously the award that matters mostly to me and isn't quite as important to you, but because I've worn everything, a lot of people want to know what my personal favorites are. It's something I get asked about pretty much every single day, so I figured I would include it in the SR4U Boot Awards for 2018. Unfortunately, there were a lot of boots this year that I really liked that I could legitimately call my personal favorite. So instead of awarding one single boot for this award, I'm actually going to award 4. And these are the 4 boots that I wore the most, not just in testing, but when I wasn't testing out other boots because I liked them that much. The ADIDAS X 18.1. This is a boot that fits me really well. I love the softness of this speed mesh upper. It has that tight one-to-one connection that you'd expect from a speed boot, but it never feels like it's squeezing your foot, which is something that I'm personally not a huge fan of. I think it has one of the best, most comfortable heel liners on the market, although that is kind of a controversial opinion because some people have tried this boot and absolutely hate the way that that feels. I really like it though for whatever reason. And then of course it does have the speed frame, which is basically just a sprint frame that gives it this light base, nice and flexible. And this stud pattern, for whatever reason, even though it's the same layout we've been seeing from Adidas for years and years and years now, it just feels a little bit more aggressive on this particular boot with the slight modifications they've made to the stud tips. So as an overall package, I absolutely love this boot. And like I said in part 1, I think, it's my personal favorite speed boot on the market right now. The Nike Phantom Vision is a boot that I have been extremely impressed with. I believe I said in a previous video that it took over for the Nike Tiempo Legend 7 Elite as my personal favorite Nike boot. And that's mainly because this is one of those boots that immediately feels broken in. And that's very important for me. When I'm not testing out boots, I have to go back to the boots that I haven't worn sometimes in a month or two. And often a lot of boots kind of need to be broken in again after sitting for so long. And I don't get that sensation from the Phantom Vision Elite, mainly because the upper is just one giant sock that somehow locks your foot in place and feels very responsive. I also really love the added texturing on the upper that you really just don't get from any other boot out there right now. It does have kind of a little bit of a grip element to it, if you can call it that. It also has really aggressive traction, and it's a lot lighter than you might expect based on how the boot looks. I still don't think that it's the best looking boot in the world by any means at all, but the experience and comfort that I get from this boot, along with all the little tech features, I just think it's a really good product. The New Balance TEKELA 1.0 Pro. For similar reasons to that of the Phantom Vision, this is a boot that has an upper that's just so soft and sock-like that it really doesn't require any kind of break-in time. I can not wear them for 3 months, but then confidently wear them in a match for the first time and not have to worry about getting any kind of blisters or experiencing any kind of discomfort at all. I happen to really like the way that the boot looks as well. And if I'm just looking for something that feels very natural on my feet, this is often the boot that I'll go for. The PUMA Future 2.1. I was a big fan of the 18.1, and this is just a slightly softer, slightly more padded variation of that, which is not a bad thing at all. Again, this is one of those boots that instantly feels comfortable for me for whatever reason. And for those that are wondering, I do prefer the mid-cut variation over the low, even though they're both really good. I just, for whatever reason, actually find the mid to be a little bit more comfortable, even though the mid-cut, for the record, does feel like a low-cut boot. It doesn't have that traditional mid-cut feel like you get from a lot of the mid-cut Nike boots, as an example. Now for 2018, you could make an argument for quite a few different boots as boot of the year. And last year, I gave this award to the Nike Flyknit Ultra. Even though it was a limited edition release, I was just so impressed with what that boot had introduced to the market and how well it all worked together that I had no choice but to award that boot the boot of the year. And this year I have 2 in particular as the main candidates in my mind as boots that are, one, particularly unique, but also really good, because that's very important. It's not just enough to have a weird design if it's not gonna be good. So I was really stuck between the Adidas COPA 19 Plus and the Nike Phantom Vision Elite. Those are the 2 boots that for me really stuck out as the best of the best in terms of new concepts, new ideas, what the modern football boot industry represents, but at the same time being really good. So for me, I thought about it. I've been thinking about it for basically 2 weeks. I actually planned on doing this series a little bit earlier, but because of how much I've liked the COPA 19 Plus, it's kind of delayed things, but I've finally decided the boot of the year is the Nike Phantom Vision Elite. If you've been watching the channel this year and you've seen all 3 parts of the SR4U Boot Awards, it shouldn't be too surprising why I've picked these as the boot of the year. It is the one boot that I probably would call my personal favorite at the moment if I had to pick one single pair to wear and I couldn't wear the other 3 that I just mentioned in my personal favorites award. I just love the way that it feels. It really is the closest thing to just wearing a simple pair of socks in regards to how it wraps your foot and the overall comfort that's on offer here. I love the added texturing. I love the QUADFIT system. The one thing I still don't care for is the way that it looks, but you could make the argument that the COPA 19 Plus is not the best looking boot either, but this, it's lighter, it offers more aggressive traction, it does more things better than the COPA 19 Plus, which is ultimately why I picked this as the boot of the year over what is very, very impressive in the form of the Laceless COPA 19 Plus. So for me, this had to be the winner. You might have a differing opinion. That's perfectly fine. Leave your pick for the best boot of 2018 down below in the comments. Really curious to hear, but if you're asking my opinion, this is it. And that concludes the 2018 SR4U Boot Awards. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. If you have any questions or comments on any of my picks, feel free to leave them down below in the comments and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. If you enjoyed this video and perhaps want to follow my content throughout 2019, which will of course have the 2019 SR4U Boot Awards, look forward to that coming 1 year from now. Be sure to hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you don't miss out on the next new video when it goes live, which will be tomorrow because I post new videos every single day. All my social media information, that's linked down below in the description as well, so follow me there if you don't already. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for a great 2018, and we'll see you in the next one.